Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants.
Welcome, listeners, to the Fort Worth 148 Masonic Podcast, and thank you very much for joining us again. My name is Gabe Jagush, and I am the Worshipful Master of Fort Worth Lodge.
I am Billy Hamilton. I am a past master and the current Tyler for Fort Worth 148.
And we have a special guest today.
And I'm Poke Runyon, and I am a member of Culver City Fauché Lodge, Blue Lodge, and also a member of Los Angeles Scottish Rite, and KCCH and Scottish Rite, and I'm also the master of the Ordro of the Templi Astartes, which is a Crater-Rapoa magical order, sponsored by the Church of the Hermetic Sciences, of which I am the president, and I'm also an officer in the Golden Dawn, and that's the temple that's here in Los Angeles, and I have some other interesting affiliations and accomplishments. I'm a member of a Tibetan tantric yoga order, and also a member of Feraferia, the nature goddess worshiping religion, and so I also produce video documentaries and have produced some science fiction movie, and I'm considered to be a kind of an expert on the esoteric, and of course, the esoteric side of Masonry is the hot topic these days, and so that's why I'm here, and so that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, during our pre-recording talk, you described yourself as a quote bit of an esoteric item. So we're really glad to have you on the show. As our listeners are familiar with the format, we'll start off with some individual Masonic questions. So, Poke, could you tell us actually, we'll start with a non-Masonic question. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself outside of the Masonic and esoteric lens? Who is Poke Runyon as an individual outside of all of these orders and outside of all of this mystical nature, you know?
I describe myself as a gentleman of the old school, and which a gentleman of the old school is one who recites classic poetry to heartless beauties while wrestling alligators, and I've been everything. I am what my uncle described as a bearer for adventure. Adventure's been my thing ever since I was a kid. I grew up on Edgar Rice Burroughs, on the Tarzan books and the Mars books and all, and I wanted to be an adventure writer. And one of the things I found out about all my adventure writer heroes, like Edgar Rice Burroughs and all, they were all adventurers themselves. So I decided that's what I was going to be. I was going to be an adventurer. So I became a scuba diver, and I was out shooting barracuda and sharks, and spear fisherman and a diver, and then my eyes weren't good enough to be a fighter pilot, so I became a paratrooper and went through special forces and ended up being a captain in the Special Forces Reserve, and founded my own A team, and then I went down to Belize, British Honduras, and went diving and hunting down there, and then I would have been over to the Bahamas, looking for treasure, and I've done all kinds of things, if it's exciting and dangerous, then I'm going to do it. I'm probably one of the oldest ninjas to ever get a green belt in ninjutsu. I did that when I was 65 because I'm just as I said, I'm a bear for adventure. I published my first novels when I got out of the Army, when I got out of active duty. Night Jump Cuba, and that was the first anti-Castro novel ever published, and then the sequel, Commando X, which and I'm going to republish. I'm going to republish both of those pretty shortly, and they'll be available. Then after that, I went out to Hollywood and tried screenwriting and all. Well, I was almost successful, but then I got ill, and I got ill. What it really was an atrophied gallbladder, a bald gallbladder that was of mine that was turning to stone. So because of too much of my mother's bacon grease. Anyway, that gallbladder was going out on me, and I tried to hypnotize myself because I thought if you got an ulcer, and they misdiagnosed it as an ulcer, and I tried to hypnotize myself to get rid of this ulcer, and it really was an atrophied gallbladder, and it was killing me. And I hypnotized myself, and I couldn't continue my screenwriting career at all with this thing. So I went into hip, and I didn't manage to keep the pain down, but at least I could. When they finally diagnosed it properly, I was able to keep the pain, the inflammation down enough to let them operate on the darn thing, and they cut this gallbladder out of me that was as big as a fist, and it was solid stone. They had to chip it apart. But in the course of all this self-hypnosis, I got very, very deep into tantric yoga, and I discovered a secret of ceremonial magic in the process. And so after I recovered, I became one of the very, very few ceremonial magicians who could actually summon spirits to visible appearance and teach people how to do it. And so I founded the Order of the Templi Astartes and the Church of the Hermetic Sciences back in 1969, and we've been going ever since. And the church is the corporation, and the Order of the Templi Astartes is the lodge, and we've been going ever since. And we published the definitive book, the Book of Solomon's Magic, and of course, that is related to Masonry because the Masonic Solomon legend, and according to one version of the legend, Solomon got the jinn to build the temple for him. But that's not the Masonic version, but that is a magical version of the Solomon legend. And so Solomon legend has a Masonic connection, obviously, and so we've been going ever since 1969. We've been initiating people. We use the Crater-Rapoa system, and that's a European system. It was the German scholars put together an first century Alexandrian initiation, and they came out with this about the same time as the Illuminati. In fact, the Illuminati got their owl, the owl symbol of the Illuminati. They got that from the Crater-Rapoa. And I recently, I recently asked if we could have it back, and they told me they said, "Oh, sure, you can have it back," and so we took it back from them. But anyway, I got into Masonry after I got my master's degree in anthropology. I joined the Masonry. And I went through York Rite and Scottish Rite and, of course, Blue Lodge. And then after that, I went into Tibetan Tantric Buddhism, and I was fortunate enough to study under some really, really, really good Tibetan gurus. And so I was able to combine what I learned from the Tibetans with our Western system. And this enabled me to really advance as far as magic is concerned. Anyway, that gives you a pretty good idea of who I am and what I've done and whatever. So any questions on any of that?
Go ahead, Billy.
Well, no, I was going to say there was a lot there to unpack. I mean, going back to I grew up reading the John Carter of Mars novels, so like I definitely perked up when you said that, because you're right, though that kind of lays the groundwork for a desire for adventure when you're still young. The question I had was, I was wondering, did you become a Mason before your interest in ritual magic, or was it the other way around? Were you a ritual magician?
It was the other way around. Okay. Masonry was on my list of things to do. The first thing I had to do was get a master's degree in anthropology. I figured I had to do that, and one of the reasons why I figured I had to do that is, even though I had this shamanic experience with the gallbladder, and all of that, there were so many. I hate to be critical, but that's the truth. There were so many phony gurus around at that time, and I knew I had something, and I knew I had something genuine. I knew I had something real. I knew I had something worthwhile, and I thought, I've got to back this up. So I went back to school on the GI Bill, and I got my master's degree in cultural anthropology, and boy, that was a wonderful experience, because I was able to go on National Geographic expeditions and do all sorts of stuff. And it was really, really wonderful education. And in fact, my wife told me, I was thinking about psychology, and my wife told me, good Lord, no, those people are all nuts, spoke. If you you need anthropology, that's your thing. And she was right, because I'd much rather be Indiana Jones than some kooky guru, and so after I got my master's degree, then I knew I had to do Masonry, because Masonry was so much a part of the Western esoteric heritage was wrapped up with masonry. So I knew I had to do that. Okay, I got to go. So I did. I did Blue Lodge and York Rite and Scottish Rite, and I kind of gave up. I gave up York Rite for the same reason that a lot of people do, because I couldn't handle all three. Paying all three of them, those things. So I switched. I switched my interest over to Scottish Rite, and just kind of stayed with that. But and then I had to do the Tibetan thing, and I was very, very fortunate to be able to do that. But Masonry came. That was first on my list after getting my master's.
Now, when you say that Masonry was the first thing on your list after getting your master's, was that an interest that was developed during the course of achieving your master's in anthropology, or was that okay? So that was not a pre-existing desire. That's something you developed in your study.
If you're studying magic, and my thesis was. I don't think they have a copy of it anymore. They've all been stolen. But my thesis was the rise of neo-pagan cults and magic in Southern California, and if you're going to study magic and you're going to study esoteric cults, anthropology is your thing. Magic is all anthropology. And so, if you're going a magician is essentially a shaman, and magic is shamanism, and so therefore, and that's anthropology. Anthropologists study shamanism. They don't study Western shamanism like I do. They should, but they don't. Usually the media makes the media doesn't treat us very well, and neither does academia. They study Hermeticism and all, but they don't appreciate any kind of practice.
Now, in your course of study, in what context was Masonry presented? Was it presented as kind of like a Western initiatory practice, or that was like a coming of age kind of thing? Was it presented more as a magical practice? Because obviously, everyone has kind of their own view of what Masonry is. But what was, I guess my question is, how were they teaching Masonry when you were studying?
When I was studying it, and I got my MA from California State University in Northridge. I did enough work for a PhD but the state universities don't give PhDs; they just give masters, but Masonry is considered, in the books we read and the lectures we got, it's considered in the area of a rite of passage, and it's also considered as a kind of a tribal thing. They look at Masonry as a sort of a social structure, and as far as magic is concerned, no, Masonry doesn't consider the academia does not consider Masonry magical. They consider it to be a social in the area of occult. secret societies are considered to be in the same area as a cult, and yet a cult is still a cult is defined as an organization that follows the teachings of a charismatic leader. That is the definition of a cult. But then when once the charismatic leader dies, it becomes a sect. And I did my thesis on the theme of revivalist movements, and revivalist movements are kind of religious resurgence of cultural religious movements, and as I recall, I think Bob Elwood considered Masonry to be somewhat of a revivalist, not exactly a revivalist movement, but in that category, the category of a cultural phenomenon. I think that generally speaking, they were not critical of Masonry, and yet at the same time, I can't speak for academia much later than 1980, because that's when I got my master's and that's when I left them. I know they were the anthropology. Generally speaking, anthropology tends to be somewhat left wing, but as far as its philosophies are concerned. But I think that when the feminists started to assert themselves, that's when maybe academia, in deference to the feminists, they may have become somewhat anti-Masonic in that direction. But that's later. That's after. I can't speak for anything after 1980. I really can't answer the question.
Right on. That makes sense. So with them teaching Freemasonry as being a rite of passage, or maybe a tribal thing, or maybe even approaching it from a cultic perspective, one of the things that you said you were pursuing was magical organizations and magical knowledge. What was it about Freemasonry that kind of called out to you as being an avenue that you wanted to pursue within this larger pursuit of the magical traditions?
The best way I can answer that question is with an impression. I thought I had received, but before I was initiated in my Blue Lodge initiations for 1981, I had been initiated into the Golden Dawn. I'd been initiated into Feraferia. I had been initiated into a very shamanic form of Celtic witchcraft. I had received a number of initiations, and I thought, be honest with you, I thought, what the heck can a bunch of businessmen do that could be more impressive or better than what I've already received? Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I thought. My Blue Lodge initiations at Woodland Hills absolutely blew me away. I thought I'd read Duncan, and I thought I knew everything that was going to happen. I thought, well, there's nothing these guys can do that can impress me. But they just blew me away. And what I realized when that happened, I realized that I had been hit by what is we refer to in magic as an egregore. You know what an egregore is?
Yeah, the living spirit of a collective of people organized for a purpose, basically.
Absolutely right, and that's what hit me. And here are these businessmen, these used car salesmen, these regular guys, you know. And it literally blew me away. Especially the third degree. I was hit with this 300-year-old egregore, boom, you know, and that's what masonry's got. And hope to God God and Goddess we never lose it. We never want to lose that egregore. We never want to distort it. We never want to lose it. And we want to be able. And this is what's so important about the Blue Lodge is that the Blue Lodge carries this egregore for those 3 degrees.
So
that's a precious treasure, and that in itself is important to magic. And frankly, I don't think any male magician has his training complete unless he at least gets through the Blue Lodge. I think he has to.
That's a really strong statement, and I like it. For our listeners, I briefly summarized the concept of an egregore when Poke asked, but to pause for a second and explain it for our listeners. The egregore or a egregore is it's a magical concept that when a group of people get together, they can create what's called a thought form. And they can create depending on your view, it can be an energy or a spirit. Some people might, our younger listeners might even call it a vibe. But it's a very specific sort of thing that kind of lives on its own. And if you've ever thought of, if you ever walked into a lodge and you click with the people in that lodge, you might say that you were able to participate in their egregore, things like that. But loosely speaking, an egregore is a spirit or the energy of a group of people that have been collected for a certain purpose. And so that's kind of the more detailed dive into it. Now, Poke, with all these magical orders and all the experiences that you've had, how would you say that you feel the Masonic egregore differs from other kinds of egregore?
Well, that's a good question. It differs in the sense that it has more tradition behind it, because even the Golden Dawn struggled and tried to create the same kind of an egregore that Masonry has, but of course almost all the founders of the Golden Dawn and most of the members were Masons, and they were trying to create an egregore that would have the same power, but I don't think they succeeded. And although I'm not, I'm very fond of the Golden Dawn. I think it's a dinosaur in some ways, but then in other respects, it's done some wonderful things. and I ought to discuss some of the great things that the Golden Dawn has done, but they tried to create a similar egregore to Masonry, but I don't think they've succeeded, and it's still going, and it's still going. I think there's a Golden Dawn temple in every major city in the United States, but and they're certainly worthwhile, and I encourage every magician and every Mason who wants to be a magician to certainly go through the Golden Dawn as part of your education. But they don't have that force, that egregore, and this somehow or other Masonry succeeded in being able to plug in a kind of a universal. It becomes a universal thought form. It's like the universal mind. It's a creature all to itself. It's a vast colony animal that has its own soul, and this is what, of course, the Golden Dawn was trying to do, but I don't think they've succeeded. But Masonry is the core of the Golden Dawn, of course. And I don't want. And let's not get into the OTO, because there's that their connection with Masonry is something I don't want to deal with tonight at all. Mm-hmm. And I think there are good reasons for that, good reasons for avoiding that. And but what you said about the egregore, the important thing that you didn't emphasize is that this Masonic egregore extends back to the 1700s. It extends. It's almost like another dimension. And this is why understanding the history of Masonry is important, and why every Masonic scholar has a copy of Mackey's encyclopedia on his shelf, and the history of Masonry is so vast, and as I say, it is Masonry is its own dimension. It's like another universe, it's another world, and the egregore extends all the way back to Scotland, and the Grand Lodge in England, and all that crazy stuff that the Europeans did, and it's so. What more can we say?
Indeed. Wow, that's a lot. I love it. So I think this was a question I thought of a little bit earlier when you were talking about your path to magical practice and whatnot. But something I just thought of was what was your journey? You mentioned that you had the issues with your gallbladder and how it calcified essentially, and that you had been working on trying to heal yourself with self-hypnosis. What was the thought process or the journey that took you from self-hypnosis to the Western magical tradition?
The most important thing about self-hypnosis, and all of my students, I train all my students in self-hypnosis to train them how to do it, and the very important thing for magic, and this is and self-hypnosis is good for a lot of things besides magic. It's good to to quit smoking, to lose weight, to take charge of yourself. It has a lot of advantages, but one of the main things that self-hypnosis helps in magic is in channeling spirits. Because I'm gonna say something right now that a lot of people listening are probably not going to want to hear. The spirits, so-called demons and so-called and angels, demons, and spirits exist in your mind. They exist in your mind. They dwell in you. And when you visualize them, when you see them, when you hear them, they are speaking to you from your mind. And of course, Hermetic philosophy teaches us that our minds encompass the whole universe. That in fact, we take all of the old planets, the ending in Saturn. All of those old planets are inside ourselves, and the whole universe, the zodiac, everything, the whole universe is inside you. You access it all. And I know this sounds bizarre, but I have a colleague who likes to say it's all in your head, but you have no idea how big your head is, and he's right, because it is. And we're connected. The universal mind is connected, just like this egregore of masonry is a kind of a universal mind in itself. Mm-hmm. It's a dimension. Now, the important thing about self-hypnosis is that you talk to yourself. Your conscious mind talks to your subconscious mind, and it treats the subconscious mind as a separate entity, as a separate person. You talk to your subconscious mind, and you refer to your subconscious. You talk to it as you. You say you. You address it as you, but you are addressing yourself as yourself. So yourself is split. You're split with your conscious mind talks to your subconscious mind, and then if your subconscious mind disagrees, or your subconscious mind wants to express itself, it takes over your voice and it answers you. Now, this is a phenomenon that everybody that gets into self-hypnosis is aware of this. You can ask yourself a question, and you will answer the question. And you say, "Are you feeling well?" "Yes, I'm feeling well." And this is the key, one of the keys to manifesting spirits. And in other words, when you're scrying on a crystal ball and sitting around the altar looking at the crystal ball, and when the angel finally arrives, the crystal ball lights up, and you get a kind of a green and golden aura around the ball, and then if I'm leading, let's say I'm leading the circle, and I will ask one of the people sitting around the altar, I say, "Frater so and so, does the angel speak through you?" And if he is sufficiently entranced, and then he'll start speaking, the voice of the angel will come out of him. He can only do that if he has trained himself in self-hypnosis. And that is vitally important for channeling. And of course, I'm giving you a lesson in magic right now, but then that's one of the keys is self-hypnosis. And then, of course, we have what?
Oh, I was going to say, within the realm of psychotherapy, there's the concept of the id, the ego, and the superego. Is this kind of a similar concept?
Yeah. Well, yes. In fact, we're primarily in Hermetic magic. We're primarily Jungian. Our orientation is Jungian, but Freudian concepts do apply. And as you know, as Jung once said, he said, "Well, Freud works up with people up into their 30s, and then when they get to be 40 years old, I take over." Well, actually, both Freudian and Jungian psychological principles apply all the way from teenage, from puberty all the way through to middle age and older. But I've often referred to ceremonial magic, Solomon's magic, as a medieval form of psychology. It is a form of psychology because the spirits teach lessons. They teach things. They have knowledge, and the angels have wisdom. I learned that, by the way, from an angel. The counterpart of Baal is Bahuya, and Bahuya says, "Well, you want to understand the Shemi Hamfarash and the Goetia," and he says that the Goetic spirits they have the knowledge, and we the Shemi Hamfarash we have the wisdom. Mm-hmm. They have the art, and we have the power, and that's a pretty good way to look at it. And according to our way of looking at it, that's how Solomon built the temple, controlling the creative spirits, and with the power of the angels.
So you've mentioned the concept a couple times now, and I feel like it's probably now is a good time to start diving in. What is Solomonic magic?
Solomonic magic is primarily derived from a grimoire referred to as the Goetia. And this comes out of a compendium of several grimoires that are termed Solomonic. That is referred to as the compendium is called the Lemegeton. And I have a book on this, by the way, that sells rather well, called The Book of Solomon's Magic. Mm-hmm. And you can get it on Amazon, and you can also get it from Poke Runyon at pokerunyon.com. But The Book of Solomon's Magic, and I have a video showing how to do it. Solomon was considered to be by the Arabians, by the Hebrews. He was considered to be the master magician. Solomon had a magic ring. Now, the British novelist Jonathan Stroud has a book out, one of his Bartimaeus series. He has a demon Bartimaeus he writes novels about. He's kind of a spin-off on Harry Potter, and he had that. Don't get the idea of Solomon's magic from Jonathan Stroud's Solomon's Ring, because I'm halfway through the book now, and I know that, and I can't recommend it at all. The Goetia, which is the first, called the Lesser Key of Solomon, that's the first book in the Lemegeton. That has a series of 72 spirits. That's all the way around the zodiac twice, and those 72 spirits are, well, calling them evil is really, they're not all evil. Some of them have pretty nasty habits, but the spirits, as I say, they all teach something. All of them in the Goetia, they all do. And then their semi-Hampharash counterpart angel, their counterpart angel, one of the magicians that we follow, Franz Barton, he gave all the semi-Hampharash angels about the same. They had them teaching and sort of supervising the same stuff, and that's pretty valid. So you want to work both of them together when you work these so-called demons in the Goetia. You got to work the semi-Hampharash angels along with them, because that way you're kind of keeping them under control. But Solomon was supposed to be the master of the jinn, according to the Arabian Nights, and they said he had this ring this magic ring that actually he got it from the Queen of Sheba, and she was half jinn anyway. She was kind of a half-breed, half in the magical dimension with the jinn, and the half in the human dimension with, she, by the way, is the Queen of Sheba is the patron saint of the alchemists, and then in the Middle Ages.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, also for any of our listeners that are wondering, the I guess historical or religious context for Solomon being a master of the jinn and being a spellcaster and a magician, if you want to learn more about that, you can read the 34th chapter of the Quran, which is actually titled Sheba or Saba.
Yeah.
So, if you don't mind me bringing it up, because for some of our listeners that may be newer to the concept of the Shemhampurish and the Goetia, and bringing this back to what we were talking about earlier with self-hypnosis actually gives you, that's when you're talking to the angels and the demons, that you're kind of accessing your own subconscious, right? In your own, I guess, the inner aspects of yourself. And I guess for those who may not be familiar with the concept, I mean, that's what we're still talking about here, right? It's kind of unlocking the hidden potential within yourself through these conversations, through like Asmodeus, and would that be an accurate description?
Yes, and this is a big problem that I have this problem because so many writers on magic, and there are a lot of them. And there's a lot of magic books out there. They don't want to admit that these spirits live within yourself, and they don't want to admit that. Hermetic philosophy says it over and over and over again, and a lot of these people they say they're hermetic, but they've never read the hermetic treatises. They haven't read the Pomander. They haven't read the Asclepius. They don't know what it is they think they believe.
Right.
And Hermes said that the gods of the zodiac are eternal, but man creates the gods of the earth sphere. And Hermes also said that you can go anywhere in the universe at the speed of thought. There are so many things about Hermetic philosophy that these writers that write these magic books don't understand. They think that these spirits, these Hermetic spirits and all, live in some other dimension, like one of my colleagues described it as a planet of rocky, a rocky planet with very little air and a lot of caves, and all these demons are like gargoyles, and they all live in these caves in this dimension of caverns and jagged rocks and whatever, and that's if you want your spirits to be that way, I suppose they will be.
Right.
Yeah. If you really want them to be, if you want them to be nasty and you want them to be like gargoyles, and we've got a big gargoyle that I bring out on Halloween. Great big gargoyle, and I'm looking at him right now. He's sitting over on top of my book, above one of my bookcases, and I thought about taking him down to the temple, putting the triangle down flat on the floor, putting this gargoyle in the middle of the darn thing, taking a picture of it and sending it to one of my friends that believes this sort of thing, and say, "Look, buddy, we got one of your critters. What do you want us to do with it?" Anyway, no, the spirits are Crowley made the mistake of saying that the spirits of the Goetia are portions of the human brain.
Mm-hmm.
No. The brain is hardware. The spirits are in software. The spirits, the mind is the software. The brain is the hardware. And so what Crowley didn't care for Jung. He never got into Jung. But the spirits are in the Jungian dimension. They're in the mind, yeah. They're in the mind because the mind extends to the whole universe.
Right.
So consequently, these spirits can't have a separate identity. They do, and they kind of have a collective identity because I've got a little bit of, we've all got a little thing in our mind, a little niche somewhere in the mind that is reserved for one of these goetic spirits, and like my one of my friends, Lon Duquette, says we all come hardwired with 12 six-packs of Goetia spirits. And yeah, so you got this little niche in there where they live, and they may not be that strong in there, but once you activate them, then they'll come in from somewhere else, and fill up that niche for you.
So I'm
not saying that these spirits don't have an independent identity. They may very well have, but they still come through you. They come through your mind, and that your mind is the receiver, and you have to realize that. And by the way, I've done exorcisms, and I have to say this. But as far as magic is concerned, and magicians and people who work with this sort of thing,
mm-hmm.
There is no such thing as demonic possession. What there is demonic obsession. So when we exercise, we do an exorcism, it's because a person has an obsession with a spirit, not a possession.
Okay.
You could do a possession. You could do a possession, and they do it in voodoo. They do possessions. They tell my horse. They did dance and drink and dance, and then finally the spirit takes over, and that could be termed a possession. But after that after the drums stop and after the rum wears off, then the possession is over.
Well, and that makes sense because I mean, even if you look at the old Christian texts where they talk about the 7 deadly sins, each one is governed by an archdemon, and in a way, it would seem almost like, possession is the emulation or maybe even a loss of control for that specific domain, I guess, if you would, which I guess could be seen as, if you're conquering that particular entity, for lack of a better word, you're actually attacking that, trying to regain control over that portion of yourself, that own part of yourself that has gone out of control.
Yeah, but this obsession that is a problem with Goetia, because Goetic spirits, once you know how to conjure them, they are very gregarious. They really, really, Stroud in his demon stories, he says Stroud with his Bartimaeus stories, oh, the demons don't want to be summoned. That's painful for them. They don't want it. They hate to be summoned. They hate magicians. They don't like you at all. That's, this guy knows nothing about practical magic. Poetic spirits are the most gregarious metaphysical creatures that in the universe. They're so happy. They're so happy when you call them up. I mean, where have you been? I've been waiting for you. They love to help you, but unfortunately, that they can be so friendly that they can actually you can become too friendly with them, and that's the obsession. And you get obsessed with them, and they want you to build a little shrine for them, and they want you to feed them, and they want you to they can be a problem in that regard. That's why I say possession is not the problem; it's obsession.
So now I have a clarifying question here, and so for context, I think some of the listeners already know this, but for the purposes of our conversation, I'm kind of coming at this from a very bog standard Episcopalian perspective, right? So love this conversation. I am also a little bit out of my depth. But the question I have is, when you say that the spirits are within you, and that you're the receiver, are we talking about the spirits are a manifestation of your human impulses and your subconscious thoughts, or are we talking about like an internally generated sort of thing, or are we talking about the spirits as like external beings that also sometimes reside in somebody's mind? Because that's something I'm not super clear on.
Well, that, of course, this whole situation with the spirits residing within us, or being in, we can call them forth. You kind of have to imagine them as being separate, and this is one of the reasons why the people don't want to hear this. They automatically want to imagine them as being separate from their minds, being separate from their they want to imagine that, and therefore you try to explain that it's in their mind. They don't want to hear it, and yet at the same time, our mind can expand and does expand to the limits of the universe almost, or at least to the limits of the Hermetic universe. And let's be honest about it, that the Hermetic universe really doesn't extend much further out than Saturn, because that was as far as the eye could see before we developed telescopes.
Mhm.
And so the Hermetic universe doesn't extend. It extends out to Saturn, and then beyond that is the zodiac. And so, of course, it extends to the zodiac, and then naturally beyond the zodiac is the Empyrean plane. That's heaven, or whatever you want to call it. But so we're going to have to imagine these spirits inhabiting all the planets out to Saturn, and in fact, well, we've managed to figure out how to get out to Neptune and Uranus and Pluto, and mechanically, because one of the problems, and my wife has been talking about this just recently. Oh my gosh, these Hermetic astrologers, they can't. They can't relate to modern astrology, because modern astrology factors all the outer planets, and they don't deal with the outer planets. Well, we finally figured out how to do that, how to deal with it, but then then the Hermetic astrologers haven't caught up with us yet on that, and they still are in that Hermetic universe as far as calculating transits and all sorts of astrological aspects. But for working purposes, because our minds do extend, and because we have all the planets within us, the old Italian Magus Ficino, he talked about the planets within, and we have all the planets within us, and so all of the spirits inhabit these various planets and spheres of the tree of life and dimensions within us and within the Hermetic universe, and that's where we have to keep them, and that's where we have to imagine them, and that's so we keep them. When we say it's all in our mind, we're also saying it's all in the Hermetic universe, and I know that's kind of a head bender, but then on the other hand, that's about the best we can do.
So is it a matter of microcosm and macrocosm?
Microcosm, yep, exactly. Microcosm, macrocosm. Thank you for getting that terminology out, because you have to continually work with that principle.
So by knowing ourselves, we know the universe.
Yeah. And for any of our listeners that are also Scottish Rite Masons, I think a good point to impose upon our Scottish Rite based listeners is this is stuff that is covered in the Scottish Rite degrees, as above, so below, and a number of other concepts. So hopefully for the average Scottish Rite Mason, this might not be super foreign, but just kind of I'm kicking out a reminder to our Scottish Rite Masons of this should look kind of familiar.
Yeah, there's a lot of this in the 28th, and then recently Rex Hutchins kind of pushed the 28th aside and put it all into the 27th, and yet he left an apple on the altar, and then I always do Brother Truth in the 28th degree, and so Brother Truth in the 27th degree. Rex left this apple on the altar, and then he had Brother Truth saying at the end of the altar, at the end of the degree, he has Brother Truth declaring, "We don't have any secrets. We don't present any secrets. We don't present anything that the public isn't aware of," and on and on. We have no secret formulas or no secret knowledge. And so after I said all that, and then I sliced the apple sideways, and I brought all the candidates up around the altar, and I showed them the pentagram inside the apple.
Mm.
And one kid looked at me and he said, "Are you Merlin?" I said,
"Are you Merlin?"
No. I said, "No, but I'm working on it."
Oh, you kind of look like it. You got the beard to go with it.
Yeah.
And all
I told Rex about it. And he gave me a kind of a sour look. I don't think he. Well, I said, "Well, you put the apple on the altar."
That's so funny.
Well,
that's funny.
Actually, and so you did bring up the tree of life in that last item. That was one thing I did want to touch upon was the Kabbalah, because it is contained in a lot of Western esoteric traditions. And as you were talking about the 7 planets of the Hermetic cosmology, if you will, that's contained within it, as well as the 12 astrological signs. And so one of the questions I get in something I find myself in a lot of discussions about are the impact and importance of the Kabbalah to the Western esoteric tradition. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the Kabbalah now, we have several Kabbalahs.
Mm-hmm.
We have Kabbalah, and that's what you might call primarily Lurianic Kabbalah, or Rabbinical Kabbalah or whatever. And
Right.
then we have Qabalah, and that's Hermetic Kabbalah. And then we have Cabal, and that's supposed to be Christian Kabbalah. But there's a kind of a paradox about the Kabbalah that we don't teach in Scottish Rite. Although Pike, if you wade through Morals and Dogma, you will probably pretty much find out the Kabbalah, and this includes the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah was originally Greek.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm virtually certain that the Sefer Yetzirah was originally written in Greek. And see, the Hebrew alphabet has only 22 operative letters. I say operative because there are more finals, but there's
Right.
only 22 operative letters, okay? Now, they need, in order to have a full Kabbalah, to get all the way around the zodiac, in order to have letters for all of the elements and for all of the planets and all of the signs of the zodiac and the elements, you need a 24-letter alphabet.
Okay, and is that including Earth and Spirit?
In fact, Gershom Shalom admits that. The Hebrew alphabet, for doing a proper Kabbalah, the Hebrew alphabet is 2 letters short.
Okay.
The Greek alphabet had 24 letters. That's why I think, and the Hebrew alphabet, that's why this whole thing got started in Alexandria in the 1st century.
Okay.
And the Kabbalah was originally in Greek, probably by the Valentinian Magus Marcus. He probably is the one that started it. And he had a celestial analog, all the signs of the zodiac and all the planets. And in fact, I kind of suspect that maybe Marcus originally wrote the Sefer Yetzirah, because Tetragrammaton really should be, and with the Samaritans it was, the 3 mother letters instead of YHVH. It should be the 3 mother letters, and then you could add, if you do it in the 22-letter alphabet, you have the 3 mother letters, and then you add Saturn.
Okay.
Because Saturn was the beginning of the physical universe, and this is very controversial, and I maybe it's something we really shouldn't talk too much about.
Okay.
because yeah, let's. However, the Kabbalah is very, very, very important. Of course, the Arabic version of it is called Abjad, or at least we call it Abjad. The Arabs don't call it that, but the and the Sufis don't call it that. But the interesting thing about the Arab version of Kabbalah, which is different than our version, is that they go on sonics, they go on tonalities, on syllables and tonalities, and they have their analogies like Idris Shah, and I know, I like Idris Shah, but of course the Sufis, they all hate him. But Idris Shah has a book called The Sufis, and in there he explains the difference between their Kabbalah and ours, and they go on sound analogy, on syllables and sound, whereas the Hebrew Kabbalah goes on direct numeric analogs, and there is a difference.
So what's interesting there, actually, and we don't have to belabor the point, but as you were talking about the thought that he was a Valentinian that actually came up with it, it actually makes quite a bit of sense, because there is, for it to be a strictly Hebrew, I guess, concept, there seems to be a lot of Gnosticism and Gnostic concepts that are baked into it.
Of course.
And Sufism is really kind of like an Islamic Gnostic sect in itself. So that I've often wondered if at some point there was this cross-pollination between Gnostic Christian sects and Gnostic Jewish sects that ended up in the Sefer Yetzirah, or the Tree of Life as we know it.
Oh, I'm sure there was. That Alexandria had a very, very large Jewish community, and as you probably know, and I don't know how many of our listeners know this, but the Septuagint, one of the Ptolemies, and I forget which one, he wanted to get a Torah in Greek. And so he got the rabbis and the Jewish community in Alexandria to get together and with his scholars, and they rendered the Torah into Greek, and that was called the Septuagint. And then the Jewish community apparently lost their Torah, their own Torah in Hebrew, their old ones, and they had to go in and borrow the Septuagint from the library and translate it back into Hebrew in order to recover their Hebrew. Well, when they did that, when they got to numbering the pages and the chapters and everything, they used Greek letters because the Greek had the numerical analog and the Hebrew didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was a bombshell, because before that, people thought, especially all the Elvis Levy type, credulous people, and Eliphas Levi, and the problem with that guy is he never read Porphyry, he never read Iamblichus, he just made this stuff up, and so many of that generation, they didn't do their homework.
Right.
The Germans did their homework, but the French didn't, and the thing though is that the Kabbalah, like I said, was originally Greek, and they so they had the number analog, and the old Hebrew didn't. And what is Kabbalah without a numerical analog?
Right. Well,
you don't have one.
Right, because
now,
I mean that.
Yeah.
So something I'd like to ask about is, we've kind of talked about Kabbalah and the other magical currents and stuff, but you kind of have a brainchild of your own, and a project that you've been working on for a very long time, which is your own magical order, the Ordro Templi Astartes. Apologies if I got that wrong. Can you tell us a little bit about the OTA and what led you to create it, and what the goal of the OTA is as an order? And I guess just walk us through the Ordro Templi Astartes.
Well, when I first started into this, I had my gallbladder out, and that was pretty traumatic. But I recovered from having my gallbladder out. I found out that I could still do this. I could still summon these spirits to visible appearance, and I could still do this sort of thing. So I decided to go ahead and create if I had something like this, and as far as I could tell, I was the only individual who could do this, and so that I decided I would form an order and I'd teach it, and certainly worth doing. So, but the first two spirits that I called forth were Baal and Astarte, and they were Baal was number one in the Goetia, Baal, and then Astarte was number 26. We moved her over to the other directly opposite Baal in the semi-entourage. I mean in the Goetic circle, but those two, they were actually Solomon's god and goddess, so to speak, because the truth of the matter is Solomon was not a Hebrew. He was an Israelite, yes, certainly an Israelite, but he was a Canaanite king, and he did not worship YHVH. He worshipped El, the original god of the Elo, and the god of the Elohim, and Baal and Astarte. He built a temple to Astarte, and of course Baal was Astarte's consort, and so we started the order of the Temple of Astarte based on that principle that this was essentially a Canaanite. This was essentially a Canaanite phenomenon, and these and Baal and Astarte and they were Goetic spirits, but they were about the same as the spirits of the Book of Enoch. They were the old gods returning, coming down, and coming back as Goetic spirits. And so we'd bring them up as Goetic spirits and then honor them as Canaanite gods. And so we established the OTA, the Order of the Temple of Astarte, venerating Astarte, and because we thought that it was certainly better to venerate a goddess than to venerate a storm god. Goddesses are a lot nicer, and they're and our Astarte was very nice to us, and so and very, very shortly on, under the influence of Fred Adams of Periferia. He was one of the greatest modern American magicians was Fred Adams of the Periferian nature religion. He was resurrecting the Eleusinian mysteries, and of course, and he had seasonal rituals, and so well, if Fred's going to have seasonal rituals, we're going to have them too. So I started working. I was already back at school going for my master's. I was undergraduate at that point, but I started researching this for the seasonal. So we recreated the old Canaanite seasonal ceremonies of Baal and Astarte and the rest and the other Canaanite members of the Canaanite pantheon, and actually, Nag Hammadi was very, very important, but a lot of people don't realize that that in the 1930s, the old Canaanite ceremonies and the old Canaanite religion was recovered along the coast up north of Sidon and Tyre was a Canaanite city called Ugarit, and they in the 1930s they dug up all these rituals, the rituals of Baal and Astarte, and so we were able to actually recreate, although we did it in Renaissance fair style, but kind of Chester Mystery Play style. I used Chester Mystery Plays as a sort of a style guide. We recreated the Canaanite ceremonies of Baal and Astarte, and we did them 4 times a year, and we've been doing them. We started in 1974 doing a whole cycle of these ceremonies, and we're still doing them. And during the pandemic, we had to do them on the radio, like I'm talking now. but otherwise, we do them out in the yard. We have a henge and an outdoor pavilion where the gods are enthroned, and we do these seasonal ceremonies. And as I say, I use the Chester Mystery Plays, the British Chester Mystery Plays, as a sort of a guideline. And so consequently, our seasonals are kind of like Ren Fair. They're sort of like Ren Fair events, If you like seeing all these St. George and the Dragon stuff at the Ren Fair, you'll enjoy our seasonals. And so we continue. We do other spirits of the Goetia too, besides Baal and Astarte, but they're our primary. They're our patron god and goddess, and so we do them most of the time. And then when we first got started, we were looking for an initiation. I was looking for an initiation, and I went through all the OTO stuff, and I went through all the Golden Dawn stuff, and I thought, oh, gee, these, this is all kind of Victorian and very, very sedate and pompous and whatever. We need something exciting. We need something dramatic. We need, oh boy, I had a book, and I'd had it for quite a while. In fact, I'd gotten it for a girlfriend of mine who was born on Halloween and thought she was a witch, and she wanted a book on magic, so I got her Paul Christian's History and Practice of Magic back. Okay. And then I remembered that before I gave it to her, I read The Initiation of the Pyramids in this. This was French from back in the 1800s, the 1860s. And so I got another copy. I'd given the first one to my girlfriend. I got another copy of it, and I found out, and I got the Initiation of the Pyramids out of the History and Practice of Magic, and oh boy, this was really dramatic. This had ordeals, and it had challenges, and it was French. It was a real initiation, and So we adopted that as our first initiation. And then, as time went on, I discovered that this initiation into the pyramids that Paul Christian had written in 1863, that this was actually condensation of 7 degrees of a German publication called the Krater Rapporteur. And this was the Germans back in 1760, around the same time as the Illuminati, this bunch of German Masons, Masonic scholars, created this, what they called a 7-degree outline of a first century Alexandrian initiation. This is what they had created, and they called it the Krater Rapporteur. And I realized that Paul Christian's initiation of the pyramids, my gosh, that was he jammed stuff from all 7 degrees of the Krater Rapporteur together in that thing, and added a few things of his own, and so we started doing all the Krater Rapporteur. We started off and integrating our system into it, and it into ours, and so we eventually in the last couple of years, right before the pandemic hit, we got all 7 degrees. We had all 7 degrees of the Krater Rapporteur Reformado. Yeah, we call it the Reformado because we've made a lot of changes and shipped a lot of things. Well, of course, Paul Christian did too. But so we now have, we have a Holy Guardian Angel retreat, and by the way, I want to talk about that a little bit too. That this Holy Guardian Angel thing, because it's not what a lot of people think it is, and we got all of the degrees of the Krater Rapporteur, and we've mounted them all, and we have a fully Rosicrucian inner order, established an inner order, and we finally ended up with accepting the Valentinian system, and we have, and this is really got a whopper. And you, as an Episcopalian, you're probably not going to like this one. We have actually transitioned using the Nicene document and Hippolytus and whatever. We've actually transitioned Baal and Astarte all the way up to Jesus and Mary Magdalene in our Rosicrucian degrees.
So it's Rosicrucian, but with Baal and Astartes as thematic elements instead. Okay.
Yeah, there was a document, and there was a Gnostic sect called the Nessenes, the serpent sect. Not the Ophidians, the Nessenes. They believed that all of the dying gods, Isis, Osiris, Adonis and Adonis, Ishtar, Tammuz, all of the dying gods eventually culminated in Jesus and Jesus Christ. And of course, if you follow the Valentinian line, which we do, then you've got to have, Jesus has to have a consort, and of course, naturally, Mary Magdalene fits the bill on that. And she's a resurrecting goddess, she really did. She was the first one to see Jesus after he was crucified, and of course, she also prepared him. So she fits the bill. And I don't know whether you've ever read the Mary Magdalene's gospel, but it's in Nag Hammadi, and so we take the Nicene sermon and extrapolate on the Valentinian scheme and move Balaam Astarte all the way up like Isis and Osiris, and all the way up to finally culminating in Jesus and Mary Magdalene in the Rosicrucian. That fulfills our Rosicrucian higher degrees. I know that's a shocker, but we've got a lot of old documents to back that up, especially Hippolytus.
Huh.
I'm not. Anyway, I wanted to talk about this holy guardian angel thing.
Yeah.
Everybody, all the Thelemites and most of the Golden Dawn people and all, they all think that the Book of Abramelin and the Maj is the be-all and the end-all of the holy guardian angel, okay?
Right.
It isn't. You have 3 holy guardian angels. Now, Hermes says this, Agrippa says this, and we say this. If you go and the Pauline Art in the Lomegaton, same book that has to go, it lays this out, and it gives you all of the, and of course this follows Agrippa, and you have 3 guardian angels, and one of them is your ascendant, is the angel of your ascendant, and one of them is the planet that rules, the angel that rules the planet that rules your ascendant. And those are the 2 for your lifetime, the 2 of your particular lifetime. And then the third, the big one, is the one that stays with you through all your incarnations. And I'm not fooling about that. This is you can check this out. You can check this out in the Hermetic Corpus. You can check it out in Agrippa, and you can check it out in the Pauline Art. It's all there. And why this Abramelin thing? I'm still trying to figure out how they got this screwed up, because this what we're citing is the original source material, and this makes very good sense, because the 2 guardian angels for your ascendant and for the planet that rules your ascendant, that they cover your life, and then the supreme guardian angel is the one that stays with you through all your incarnations. And of course, if you follow the labors of Hercules, we have at least 12 incarnations that we have to go through before we can get off the wheel, so to speak, or whatever.
Is the story of Hercules something that's used in, I guess, OTA's theology, or? Oh
yeah. Well, we're accepting the labors of Hercules as part of our eschatology. Those labors indicate various incarnations that under various signs. That's kind of a heavy concept, but it works. And Valentinians believe in reincarnation, and frankly, to tell you the truth, Christian philosophy is primarily reincarnation. Jesus said, "In my house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would not have told you." And reincarnation is, I don't know why Christianity ever gave it up. I guess under the influence of I don't want to say that.
Okay.
There's a lot of things I don't want to say, and there's probably a lot of things I shouldn't have said that I've already said. But anyway.
Well, and so I guess so when you're talking about Agrippa, you're talking about the 3 books of occult philosophy.
Yeah. First 3, not the 4th. Although the fourth is more Agrippa than a lot of people think. I mean, they it's pseudo Agrippa. No, there's a lot of Agrippa in there.
Okay. Well, and so the I guess the Abramelin the Mage was a translation. Was it originally translated by S.O. McGregor Mathers?
Yeah, right. Well, they added the French version, and then the German. There's a German version that's come out recently that is probably better, but they are not aware. They're not aware of the three of the 3 angels. They're still going on the one. And I'm not trying to say that isn't valid. If you want to contact the high, but however, it's a nice idea to be able to be in contact with the angels that are actually assigned to you at birth. And they're your particular angels for this lifetime. Especially if you're one of these people that doesn't believe in reincarnation. I remember I had a magical girlfriend, and boy, she was a stage magician, and I took her to a lecture. Pat Zaleski was giving a lecture one time, and okay. Pat was going on and on about reincarnation and whatever, and so we came out of the lecture. And the girl turned around to me and she says, "Why do you people believe in reincarnation?" Kind of a nasty question. And I said, "Well, look," I said, "you look up there at the heavens," and the heavens were up there, "and look at all those stars, and look at how vast this universe is, and realize that this huge universe was created by some incredibly powerful being, and that incredibly powerful being is capable of giving us multiple lifetimes if he so desires. And so therefore, I'm going to ask him for more lifetimes, because if I don't ask him for more lifetimes, he's liable to think I don't want any. And so I just say, I want to go on and on. I want to finish my work. I want to go on and on and on. And why shouldn't I do that? So and why shouldn't I believe it? Because it's believing it gives me comfort, and if I don't believe it, I'm discomforted. So why shouldn't I believe it? And then she got mad at me because she didn't have an answer for that. And that's true. I said there is no answer for that. Reincarnation is reincarnation is fun to believe in.
Well,
why not?
So do you think it serves a purpose? Like, perhaps, you have several different spiritual traditions that talk about, reincarnation until, if you go with the Buddhists, until you're released from the wheel of suffering, right? Or if you talk about the Martinists, it's you're reincarnated until you are reintegrated back to the divine being. Do you see a purpose to the reincarnation?
Yeah, the purpose, of course, is, and that's why we use the labors of Hercules as an analog, because you have work to do. I believe in work.
There's a great line in the 4th degree of the Scottish Rite about that. That the Masonic duty is labor, and labor is itself its own reward. So I kind of like that.
That's right.
Hey,
That's
we've got
right.
work to do.
Yeah. Yeah. What else can we talk about?
Well, so I was going to tell you that you've been very generous with your time, and you know, we should probably, in the interest of time, maybe start winding down. I did want to ask though, for the Masons that maybe are just starting to get into esotericism, you know, and wanting to explore these topics, what would your recommendation be for someone who wants to start exploring these? You know, we've covered a lot of ground. What would you say would be the first step in starting down that path?
Well, if you're interested in Solomon's magic, I made the statement in my book, the Book of Solomon's Magic. I said, nobody could teach you more about this, about Solomon's magic, than I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I've caught some flack about that, naturally, but I think that's probably the truth. So if you're interested in Solomon's magic, but I warn you that there's a lot of equipment you're going to have to, and most of it you're going to have to make. And we're developing a workshop. We're going to have a workshop. We're going to be building equipment. We'll build altars. We're going to be building altars and triangles and all this kind of stuff. But that's going to be down the road. Don't hold your breath. Don't wait. You're going to end up, if you want to be a Solomonic magician, you're going to have to build a circle. You're going to build an altar. You're going to have to build a triangle. You're going to have to acquire scrying mirrors. You're going to have to, and right now, a good Madagascar crystal ball for doing your angels, they're up to $700 to $800 to get a decent one, and you're going to have that. And so this is something you really got to want to do. You really have to want to be a Solomonic. You have to want to be a wizard. You're something you got to really want to. All right. So if you do, then the Book of Solomon's Magic, and as I said, you can get it on Amazon, but I'd rather have you get it on PokeRunyon.com. And I would say that. I would say if you want to become a Hermetic, you want to study Hermetic philosophy, then get the Hermetic corpus. Start at the beginning. Read it. Read the Hermetic corpus. And old Hermes is fairly easy to read, and even the Kabbalion. The Kabbalion, I know it's mostly New Thought, but it's certainly worth reading. And there's nothing in the original Hermetic philosophy about vibration and that sort of thing, but that's primarily New Thought stuff. But and I would, if you really want to get deep into this, then we have Hermetic Yoga Beyond the Middle Pillar, and we also have Hermetic Yoga Beyond the Middle Pillar Volume 2, Rosicrucian Yoga, and that's our Jesus and Mary Magdalene, the yoga of transformation. That's the Valentinian sacred marriage, and Hermetic Yoga Beyond the Middle Pillar, Volume 1 and Volume 2. I would, if you really want to get into this, mm-hmm. and of course we have the Hermetic Hour on Blog Talk Radio. The Hermetic Hour. We do that every Thursday at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock Pacific time. We come on. So you might want to check that out. And check out the archives on Blog Talk Radio, the Hermetic Hour. And
and listen to some of those early shows, and you will we can teach you a lot about this sort of thing. And anyway, with that, that's about all. Oh, also too, you can check out. There's a video that goes along with the Book of Solomon's Magic, and that's available from several sources. It's called The Magic of Solomon.
Okay.
That's the video, and that's primarily by myself. And that shows you how to do it, and that shows scenes inside our temple. Anyway, that about wraps up what I have to to plug. But is there anything else that I can leave you with?
Oh, I think my list of questions is exhausted at this point.
Right.
We have covered a lot, and actually a lot more than I expected to. So I'm just really glad that we were able to sit down and have this conversation with you and get to know you and learn more about the Western esoteric tradition. So I've thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Well, let's keep in touch, Gabriel, and we're available, most of the time, and give me a call anytime, or my email kingsword@aol.com, and let's keep in touch, and we'll hopefully we can do this again, and maybe I can have you on the Hermetic Hour sometime if you'd like to share your activities.
Oh, that'd be pretty fun.
It would be fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to sign off and leave you with my regular sign off. Good magic.
All right.
Thank you so much, Poke. It's been a pleasure.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
So, dear listeners, that was our interview with the famed esotericist Poke Runyon. We hope that you enjoyed it very much. Definitely a slightly different interview format than we normally do. So, I have a Masonic quote of the week. I didn't realize he was going to sign off so quickly, but it was an enjoyable conversation. Unless you've got a Masonic quote, Billy, but I've got one.
No, go for it.
Yeah, it's kind of related to what Poke was talking about. Masonic labor is purely a labor of love. He who seeks to draw Masonic wages in gold and silver will be disappointed. The wages of a Mason are in the dealings with one another. Sympathy begets sympathy, kindness begets kindness, helpfulness begets helpfulness, and these are the wages of a Mason. And that is by Right Worshipful Brother Benjamin Franklin. So I figured that was kind of appropriate with Poke's statement, hey, we're here to work.
Right.
So this was definitely very different. I enjoyed it a lot. I will definitely say to our listeners, if you stuck through this episode, we congratulate you. I know that I was in way over my head for a lot of it. But I also do want to emphasize this is kind of what we're here to do. We're here to explore, interview interesting Masons, talk about interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And, this might be a little bit of a CYA move, but I do want to say that, the disclaimer that Rit says in the introduction of the podcast does very much still apply for this episode. These are not the sentiments or statements or opinions of any lodge or Grand Lodge or Masonic body. And I just want to say that to kind of cover all our bases here.
Well,
as entertaining as the conversation was.
Right. Well, and I think back about a conversation I had with Chuck Dunning this weekend, and we were talking about Masonry, right? In that it's not a religion, but it could be qualified. Or there's a big segment of the population today that designates themselves spiritual but not religious, and so spiritual practices cover a wide range of everything, really, right? It's whatever you find personal resonance with whatever helps you grow, whatever helps you transform to become a better person, and for that reason, that's why I think it's important that we discuss, alternative spiritual concepts, right? Because, something that may not resonate with us personally may resonate with someone else and helps them in their transformation to become that better person.
Yes. So, listeners, if you want to learn more about us or our podcast, you can find more about us at fortworth148.org or fortworthlodge.com. And our email is info@fortworth148.org. And Masonicon is coming up this August. It's going to be the third Saturday in August. So August 19th and 20th, I believe. We're going to have a festive board the night before. If you want more information on that, you can find us at texasmasonicon.com, texasmasonicon.com.
And speaking of Chuck Dunning, actually, he will be the speaker for that festive board.
Yes, it's our pleasure to. I guess this is our official announcement. It's a pleasure to officially announce that, as Chuck is one of our speakers. He was a keynote speaker in the past, and we are beyond thrilled to have Chuck back on the speaker roster for Masonicon, especially since it's going to be the festive board, and that's a smaller, more intimate atmosphere. So anybody that's been to Masonicon before, or anybody that listens to the podcast, you're gonna love it. I tell you, so that's what I got. But listeners, we hope that this was an enjoyable episode. We hope that you get something out of it. And, we send all of you fraternal love from Fort Worth Lodge. This is Gabe Jagush signing off.
This is Billy Hamilton signing off.